Hello, everyone. Hello, 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 hello. It is me, Kenya. Once again, we haven't been on Little Live in a while. As you all know, my name is Kenya Hutton. I serve as the Deputy Director of the Center for Black Equity. And we have my amazing co-host. Yeah, this one. No, there we go.
Yes, thank you so much, Kenya. Hello, good evening, everyone, or wherever you're watching this. Who knows? My name is Tony Marie Preston, and I work with the Center for Black Equity, and we're so excited for tonight's conversation.
Yes. This is gonna be a very interesting conversation. We're gonna talk about, sexual health and parents and when they should talk to their LGBTQ children, right?
Mhm.
And I'm really excited to bring on our guest speaker tonight. We've been chatting back and forth. Olivia's great. I'm not even gonna sing her praises. I'm gonna go ahead and bring the good doctor on. Hello.
Hello. How do you both?
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for having this conversation with us. So let's tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Olivia Kachingwe. I am a postdoctoral research fellow at Hopkins, and I am broadly a sexual and reproductive health researcher that focuses on the experiences of youth and young adults who have experiences of trauma, who have experiences of being homeless, or who are in the foster care system, or have high rates of HIV and STI, or high risk of contracting HIV, STI, and unintended pregnancies due to larger systems of oppression, right, that put them at risk for these things. And so that's who I am, and that's the work that I do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm gonna make everybody big. All right. So good. So everyone that's watching, if you have any questions, as always, place them in the comment box. We'll try to get them on the screen to get your questions answered. Always looking for good comments. Like, share. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. If you're watching this on Facebook, like the page. And so the way we usually do this, we have a couple of questions that we source out. And we can let the conversation flow. Are you ready? Awesomeness. Yep. All right, first question. What are some best practices or resources for parents so they can equip themselves with LGBTQ plus affirming sexual health information?
That's a great question. I'm going to take a three-pronged approach answer here. So one is, I'm a firm believer in the power of community, right? So, and community can come in many forms. So it can be your family, it can be those in, say, a school system. But more specifically, I'm talking about community-based organizations. So organizations such as CBE, Center for Black Equity, right? Such as PFLAG, such as supporting and mentoring youth advocates and leaders, Whitman Walker. So I would always encourage folks to look in their backyard for people who are doing this work, that are excited about it, that have knowledge about it, have the resources to share, and are literally waiting for folks to walk through their doors and ask questions, right? So that's the first answer that I'll give. The second is talking to other parents. So other folks who have had a similar lived experience, right? Like I am not blessed enough to be a parent yet, but those who are have lived experience that can add context to what you might be experiencing. Obviously, everyone walks different paths, but it's still helpful to hear from others who are living in a similar environment and may have youth that are the same age as yours. The third answer that I'll give to that question is researchers. And so I'm not saying this just to uplift myself, but as researchers, the goal is to find answers to questions, yes, but that's only part one. Part two, really, and the impactful work is to disseminate our knowledge, right? So most researchers that study this stuff or whatever it might be, if you email them or call them, would be glad to share with you tips that they have or little nuggets that they know, or even resources or current interventions or things happening that they can plug you into, right? Dissemination is something that we focus on and not often, but I'll say sometimes struggle with, right? Like what we know is only as good as our ability to give it back to and spread the knowledge to the community or those that we are trying to uplift and help. That's the goal.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. So many. You just dropped a couple nuggets right there. Looking right in our own backyard and community. And yeah, researchers are great source. A lot of information I get comes from researchers, and I go to a lot of research conferences, and it's always good to get information with folks that are gathering information and like digesting it to make it make sense, right? Because for a lay person like myself, it might be a whole big thing that's coming to me, but you have the specialty to like narrow it down to make it make sense so we can understand it just a little better. So that's great. And you also mentioned PFLAG, which is also a great resource. And a lot of folks don't know, like PFLAG has groups, like support groups based on specific demographics. Like they have one for African Americans, API, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can be around people like you to get some information. And you're right, people are always willing to share, what they know. And I know that, to be true from other parents that I've talked to, some of their strongest resources, some of their strongest support came from other people that had children that was in the same space. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Tony, want to take the next question?
Sure.
All right.
So in the age of social media, what age do you think a parent should begin having sexual health conversations with their children?
That's a loaded question. So the first thing that I will say is talking about sexual health with your child is an extension of having a healthy communication channel already established, right? And so often parents struggle with talking about sexual health because there may not already be that foundation where there's trust, right? There's comfort. There's a platform through which you can have a vulnerable moment with your child, or your child can have a vulnerable moment with you. And so I would preface my answer by saying, preparing to talk about sexual health starts in infancy, right? By just having and establishing these tenets of open communication, having a strong relationship with your child, and really being present and understanding them for who they are and being comfortable communicating with them. I would also go on to say you can have sexual health conversations with your child very young, but it should, of course, be developmentally and age appropriate. And by sexual health is also something we haven't really defined. I like to think of sexual health very broad, right? Often parents think of intimacy. And so, it may not be appropriate to talk to a 2-year-old about sexual intercourse. But what is appropriate to talk to, say, a 5-year-old about is boundaries and touch. And, what do you feel comfortable with? Is it okay if X family member gives you a hug, right? Consent. So modeling some of these things that are around healthy relationships more generally at a very young age can parlay into talking about, say, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, right? And what an intimate relationship looks like. And so it can start very young. It should start very young, but it should start with having and building the foundation to have these conversations. Now, to give you a more concrete answer, because I know I didn't drop an age, I will say that having worked with and asking youth this question, a lot of young adults say that around 15 or 16 is the correct age to in earnest start having these conversations, because that's the age when they are interested in experiencing things, their peers are experiencing things. And so that's when sitting down with mom or dad or guardian or trusted adult feels right.
Have anything you want to add, Tony? Because I have a lot.
I think just kind of a follow-up. I think I think given the exposure of media nowadays and just everything that the conversations children are having and youth are having, especially when it comes to Black and brown youth, LGBTQ plus youth. Oftentimes, they find community online and through social media and things like that. So do you think that those kind of factors that are in some ways, I guess you could say, different from other populations, do you think that impacts the age at which parents should be considering having any sexual health conversations?
Right. Not really. I think because being interested in sex is a developmental process, right? And so well before social media was even around, youth were interested in having sex or exploring sex or not, or, feeling they're coming into themselves developmentally in a sexual space, right? And so what I do think social media provides is perhaps more visual cues. It provides more exposure, and it also provides more access. So I'm thinking about, for example, online dating platforms, right? Or even social exchange opportunities, right? So it provides more access to harmful behavior, certainly. But on the flip side of that, it also, thinking about your first question, also provides access to community, right? It provides resources. There are a lot of organizations that use social media as a platform through which to educate a certain population around how to have protected sex, for example, or where to access free resources for themselves. And so I try not to demonize social media, because there are certainly benefits and some potential drawbacks to use. But in terms of this conversation for parents discussing sexual health with their children, I think it should be integrated into the conversation, right? How to navigate yourself safely on social media. But it does not and should not, I think, impact the time in which you discuss sexual health with your child. Because like I said, these conversations should be happening age appropriately, pretty young, likely well before your child is using social media regularly.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking, where did I learn a lot of my sexual health information from? It was from, I'm gonna age myself, but it was before social media, right? But it was from my friends, right? My social circles, those people that I like. That's how I learned what to do, what not to do, and how to do what I want to do from those people. It was appropriate, it wasn't inappropriate. And then that just also put me in a space where I had to unlearn some things that wasn't appropriate, right? Because I didn't have, it's funny because to this day, and I know my parents are probably watching this. We never had a sex talk, and I'm like, do y'all still think I'm a virgin? No. We never talked about it. As a youth growing up, especially a Black queer youth growing up, it would be great to have the conversation. But I want to also, and this is my piggyback into something, well, not piggyback, but lead into something else we're going to talk about later, is what about parents that aren't comfortable with that conversation? They don't know what to do. They don't have that friend circle. Like, what do they do? Parents in those situations.
So I would start by saying, again, think about sexual health broad. I think for many parents, if they sit down and really think about it, well, I don't want to speak for parents, but there are potentially topics within the larger umbrella of sexual health that you might be okay talking about. So my first response would be, think about what messages you are comfortable conveying to your child, right? You may not want to talk about intercourse. You may not want to talk about HIV, STIs. That may be too much for you, but maybe talking about boundaries, right? Physical touch or getting close to other people. Maybe that's as far as you're willing to go. So I would say that's step one, right? Really reflect on, don't shut down to the overall topic altogether, right? The other part that I would say is use your community, right? Think about other trusted adult figures in your child's life that you might be able to say, hey, you know what, uncle or auntie or whoever, pastor, teacher, I'm not comfortable having this conversation with my child, but it needs to happen. And I see you as someone that's important in their life. So next time y'all go get ice cream, right? Could you just open the door to have this conversation, right? And it doesn't have to be a sit down on the couch. It could be integrated into activities that y'all naturally do. But as a parent, right, identify who that other figure might be that you trust.
Love that. Love that. Again, we fall back into community, right? How important community is. We have a third question lined up for you, but I feel like we kind of answered it a little bit. I'll put it up on the screen anyway. But is that what role do consent and harm reduction or trauma-informed care play into this conversation about parents having sexual health conversations with their LGBTQ plus children? So I know you touched on consent and harm reduction, all these things already, but if you could wrap it up in one bow to answer this question, what would it be?
Sure. It goes back to thinking about the principles of trauma-informed approach, right? So ensuring that, for example, the conversations happen, and I say conversations because often this is not one conversation, right? Should not be one conversation, but that the conversations happen in a safe environment, for example, that your child feels comfortable talking to you, they're not worked up for some, they didn't fail a test that day at school, right? That may not be the best time. So think about a time and a place that's safe for both you and the child. Trustworthiness, transparency, right? That's also something that I talked about. And I think that goes both ways. So creating the stage where your child can be open with you, but also you with them, right? And by that, what I mean, back to your previous question, Kenya, as adults, surprise, we don't know everything, right? So your child may ask you a question and you're like, that's a good question. And so being transparent enough to say, I will get back to you on that one, right? Like, and actually get back to them, right? That builds that trustworthiness. Peer support, you bring other adults into or other perhaps older siblings, let your youth know that could be a resource for them. And the last thing that I may not have touched on concretely is empowerment of voice and choice, right? As parents, our role is to shepherd our children and help them make healthy decisions for themselves. Our role is not to make them feel like their choice is taken away from them. And so that's another thing that I would say when discussing sexual health with your child. Listen to them, right? Ask them questions about why they think that's the right choice for themselves. Yeah.
That's so yeah,
Yeah. So my social work brain is going to come on a little bit. So what I hear you saying is, self-advocacy and self-empowerment and empowering others and also being trauma-informed centering harm reduction and community are vital, key essential pieces to providing, LGBTQ plus affirming sexual health information and just that relationship that many LGBTQ plus youth need to have with, parents and guardians.
Right. No, it's true.
Yeah. Come on, social work.
It just sometimes just comes to me. So
yeah. And there's, and the reason why I'm really interested in this is because there's what we know is that when parents talk to their children, regardless of their sexual orientation, about sexual health, their children are more likely to not engage in sexual risk behavior. So, for example, to use condoms when they're having sex, to have consensual sex, to start having sex later on in life, which, all of these things we want our youth to, knowledge is power, right? And parents can really impact youth's decisions. And so that's a role that is worth leaning into with care, as we talked about, right? Because harm can come from it too. So with care and thought.
Yeah. No, love that. And yeah. I'm sitting here and I'm just like, I'm thinking about situations and people and kids. Like I'm just going through my brain and I'm like, I need to send them the link to this video. That's what my brain is going right now. You have anything, Tony, before I move on? No, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So we have a URL scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And there was a QR code up on the top of the screen. I will pop it back up there so people can see it. Good doctor. What does it tell us about this link and this project that you're working on?
Yes. So I will, I guess, tell a little, how do we get here? I'll start there. So I did a research study about a year and a half ago now, focused on how African-American fathers talk to their daughters about sexual health. And in that study, it was a qualitative study, meaning I conducted interviews. I had a couple of young adult women who were not straight or heterosexual. The focus of that project was not on exploring the impact of sexual orientation on these conversations. But those young adults had very divergent experiences. So where I am now is I am doing a study solely focused on how LGBTQ young adults, irrespective of their gender, discuss sexual health with their fathers. And the reason why I'm focusing on dads in particular is because there's a lot more research on mothers. And so fathers, Black fathers, for many reasons, don't participate in research as much. And there are many justified reasons, but they're pivotal in the family structure, right? And there are many dads that are showing up and getting it right. And so my goal of this project is to highlight, what does getting it right look like, or what are the challenges to discussing sexual health with your child, right? What makes it difficult? What conversations are you willing to have, and which conversations are tough, and why? And let's really highlight how fathers are getting it right. And once we know what those challenges are, we can better equip them with the resources to help with those challenges, right? And so this study, it's a dyadic study. So I'll be interviewing African-American fathers and their LGBTQ young adults separately. And the young adults should be between the ages of 18 to 24, live in DC, Maryland, or Virginia. The interviews will be conducted virtually because COVID, we are still in the world of COVID. So just to make sure everyone is safe. And the daughters, the sons, right, the young adults and the fathers will each be compensated $50 for their time.
That's awesome. Tony, you have any questions? Because I'll talk.
I think, one question is, can you just talk a little bit about, the importance of what folks call community-based, research, and the importance of, particularly having Black men participate in research just a little bit more. I know you talked a little bit about it, but as someone who, does research, I know that there are so many gaps in research, right, as you clearly stated, as it pertains to marginalized populations, but just,
right,
a little icing on the cake for the people.
Sure. So something that has happened historically is that many, I won't say many, but there is this rhetoric of absentee fathers, right, particularly Black fathers, and mass incarceration and them being absent in the family. And while that happens in some communities, right, there are also many dads and father figures who are showing up in the lives of young adults. And I think as someone who self-identifies as a Black African-American individual who is also a researcher, right? These are separate but yet overlapping hats that I wear. It's important that we highlight how Black men are showing up, right? To go along with ways in which they're not, but both are equally as important. And so when engaging in communities and living in communities of color and working with communities of color, we see these stories, we see these fathers, but without uplifting it, those who aren't in those spaces may not understand what that life or that experience is, right? And something I was processing with Kenya a couple of days ago as well was also around grant funding, right? Often things, we hate to say it, but often things boil down to money, right? And so when great organizations like PFLAG or like CBE are trying to put together community resources or programs and are looking for funding to substantiate the need, funders are like, okay, give me the data.
Right.
Tell me why. Tell me why I should fund this, right? And so that's where people like me are helpful. But without, so it becomes this cyclical process, right? Without community engaging in the research and us then being able to advocate and highlight what's working, what's not working, to then bring more into the community, right? All the pieces need to happen.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the research piece. And a couple of things you said, like there is that rhetoric about absentee fathers, and that's all Black fathers are, and they're not, right? Yes, there are some. It happens. I understand that, but that's not the totality of Black men involvement with their children. And I love the fact that you're trying to do research to really show that that's not the case. There are some dads that are involved in their child's lives, even their child's lives that are LGBTQ. That's that. I think that's amazing. It makes me happy. I wish I was 24 because I would sign up, but I'm 25.
You just missed it. Your birthday was yesterday.
It was just yesterday, right? Just missed it. But no. I think this is great. As y'all see, again, the QR code is up on the screen.
Yes.
If you want to be involved in the study, you can do that. You can click I was gonna say click on the link, but you can type the link right at the bottom of the screen, or you can go on the Center for Black Equity or DC Black Pride's Facebook page. We have it posted up there. It says, we're really trying to get this going and get this information out there, this needed information out there to really kind of change the storyline that is out there for our community, especially our Black fathers. That just like you said, like for a number of valid reasons aren't represented in research. But we need them, right? We need them to represent. We need these individuals to really step in and take part of research studies like this, so we can collectively change the narrative, right? Because without it, it's really just Kenya, Olivia, and Tony here saying, no, listen, it's this way. But once you do that research, you sit in an interview with someone like yourself, we really have that concrete data that's needed to really start to change the needle from the impression that a lot of communities have. I can even say outside of that, within the community have about Black fathers, right? So I think this is great. Right. We've been talking, anything we can do to support you and push this as much as we can. We will, we've been posting on our social media. I think we even sent it out in an email blast once. Like, we're trying to get it out as much as possible. I'm going to actually commit to sending it out again, another email blast to get it out to people, and share it amongst as much people as we can. Unfortunately, I know it's a restricted area right now in the DMV, but it's my hope that we'll be able to get more. You'll be able to get more funding.
Yes.
I'm part of the research study now.
Speaking it. Okay, we're speaking it into existence.
Yeah. You will get the funds to be able to do this like on a national scale. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
That I really hope and pray that happens, so we can be able to really get a good wide picture of it, because you're right, and not even about that. And like I said, yes, the to get the dollars to do these things, we need the data, but just the conversation needs to change. About it. Right?
And I think even something Tony was talked to or asked me about community engaged research. That's why I do it and why I love it, right? Because you're trying to move the needle, but also when it comes to dissemination, right? Back to where this conversation started, whatever I find, I would love to do another panel to talk about it. Right? There's a cyclical relationship that's equally as important, because we're in community, we're working with community, and we're giving, Center for Black Equity designing dissemination materials, right? Like a pamphlet or a resource that dad can come into your center and walk out with, is also really important.
Yeah.
Something else that I wanted to just clarify is young adult has to live in DC, Maryland, or Virginia, but father does not. So dad can be anywhere. So young adult, even if young adult is here for school or something, that's fine. If their permanent resident is somewhere else, but they're here
Love that.
for whatever reason, that's fine. And dad can live anywhere because again, it's all virtual.
Oh, that's even better. That makes it even more accessible.
Mhm.
Because I'm thinking, as you said that, I'm thinking of like all the universities we have in this area.
Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
their parents may live somewhere else, but they may be here for school. They can participate in
Mhm.
this and really help share that information. Yeah, get my brain going. People look away thinking
But
like,
no, just speaking of sharing, just to continue the sentiment, if
Yeah.
anyone is interested, definitely please, scan the QR code and share within your professional networks and different
yes,
communities and folks. We definitely love when community is active and sharing and participating. So we definitely encourage you all to take the survey and reach out and just be involved in the community if possible.
absolutely, absolutely. You mentioned, you would love for like a resource to be House of the Center for Black Equity for people to get, and that is something we try to put on like our website and make it accessible, and that is something that we're missing. So I really, 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 really hope and wish you much success with this, because I
Yes.
really, really am interested in seeing how this comes out, and be able to share this information with everybody. If do you have any closing thoughts for the people watching in internet land?
Other than get involved, right? If you in this study, if you meet the requirements, right, which hopefully you do, and I would love to hear from you. I'm extremely accessible. Also, don't feel free to email me directly. I'm very responsive,
Yes.
and I'm leading the project, so I likely will be the one interviewing you as well. If that makes you feel any better. And other than that, have healthy relationships and conversations, right? That's my parting ask of all of you watching is if you are a parent, just start to build relationships or maintain those relationships with your young adults, because your presence matters. It really does.
And it's never too late to start the relationship. It's
Yes.
never too late to
Oh,
start the relationship. Yeah, look at Tony.
that was a word, Kenya. I'm just gonna say, if people called it, they called it.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much
Thank
again for the
you.
Thank
work you're
you.
doing. And this has been a great conversation. All right, everybody that's watching, let me put myself, I'm all in a little box. All right, everybody. Have a good evening. Enjoy the weather. And we'll see you at DC Black Pride in 2 weeks.
Yes.
In
Yes.
1 week is coming up. The return of the original Black Pride. It was gone for two years due to COVID, and we're back bigger than ever. We just announced a headliner, Big Frida, today for the opening reception, which is going to be free. All you got to do is register online. Go to dcblackpride.org or check out our Facebook page, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
All right.
Bye,
See you
everyone.
all.
Bye.
Bye.